I never thought a simple voice message from my daughter could destroy everything I believed about her life. One rainy afternoon, my phone lit up with a note meant for her husband. When I hit play, I heard her trembling voice confessing a passionate affair with another man and admitting she was falling in love. Shaken and heartbroken, I uncovered years of secrets, lies, and a hidden truth far darker than I ever imagined, including a miscarriage that wasn't her husband's. What started as a mother's worst nightmare became a journey of betrayal, guilt, and unexpected healing. This is my story, the message that shattered our family, and the truth that finally set us free.
I never imagined that an ordinary Tuesday afternoon could rip the foundation out from under my life. My name is Eleanor Hayes, 57 years old, widowed for 8 years now, living alone in the same two-story colonial house in Bellevue, just east of Seattle, where I raised my only daughter. The rain had been falling steadily since morning, not the dramatic downpour you see in movies, but that endless, whispering Pacific Northwest drizzle that makes everything feel damp and heavy, like the sky itself is sighing with secrets. I was in the kitchen, the heart of our home, the place where Sophia and I had shared countless late-night talks over hot cocoa when she was a teenager. The marble counters gleamed under the soft glow of the pendant lights I'd installed after Tom passed away, small changes to make the house feel less empty. I wiped them down with a microfiber cloth, the rhythmic motion soothing after a quiet lunch of leftover salmon and a glass of Chardonnay. The scent of lemon cleaner mixed with the faint aroma of coffee still lingering from breakfast. My phone sat on the island, screen face up. It buzzed once, a gentle vibration that barely disturbed the quiet. I glanced over and smiled when I saw the notification. Voice message from Sophia. Sophia, my beautiful, brilliant girl. 28 now, married to Ryan for 3 years, living in that sleek, modern house in the hills of Bellevue with views of Lake Washington on clear days. She worked part-time as a freelance content writer for tech companies, flexible hours, good money, the kind of life I had dreamed for her. She sent me voice notes all the time, quick updates about her day, recipes she wanted me to try, or just, "Mom, I miss you, let's do brunch soon." I loved hearing her voice. It always grounded me. I dried my hands on the dish towel, picked up the phone, and tapped play without a second thought. The message started with a few seconds of silence, just the faint rustle of movement, and what sounded like a shaky exhale. Then her voice came through, low, intimate, trembling with emotion that hit me like ice water. "Ryan, baby, I can't keep doing this anymore." My hand froze mid-air, the phone suddenly heavy. Every time you leave for another one of these trips, I feel like I'm suffocating in this house. The silence, it's too loud. Last night with him, God, it felt so real, so alive. He touches me like he actually sees me, you know? Not like you, always half here, always checking emails, always planning the next deal, the next flight out. I think I'm falling for him, Ryan. I really am. The way he listens, the way he makes me laugh even when I'm breaking inside. I don't know how much longer I can pretend with you. I love you, or at least I think I do, but this guilt is eating me alive. Please, call me the second you land. We need to talk about us, about everything. I can't keep living like this. The message cut off abruptly, as if she'd realized mid-sentence that the words were too dangerous to finish. The kitchen tilted around me. I stared at the phone, my thumb hovering uselessly over the screen. The rain tapped harder against the windows now, like impatient fingers demanding entry. My heart hammered so loudly I could hear it in my ears. This wasn't a casual note. This wasn't work stress or a silly argument with Ryan. This was my daughter confessing an affair. To her husband. Except she had sent it to me, her mother, by mistake. I replayed it. Once. Twice. 3 times. Each listen made the words sink deeper, carving into my chest like shards of glass. The raw desperation in her voice, the way it cracked on falling for him,
the heavy breathing that suggested she'd been crying or pacing or both. Who was him? How long had this been going on? And Ryan, successful, handsome, always traveling for his executive role at a major cloud computing firm, did he suspect anything? My legs felt weak. I pulled out one of the bar stools and sank onto it, the leather cool against my slacks. Outside, the cedar trees in the backyard swayed gently in the wind, their branches dripping. Everything looked the same as it had 5 minutes ago, yet nothing was. The family photos on the refrigerator, Sophia's wedding day, her smiling between me and Tom, Ryan's arm protectively around her waist, now felt like lies frozen in time. I thought back to the last time I'd seen her, just 2 weeks ago. We'd met for coffee at that little cafe near her house. She'd looked tired, but I chalked it up to Ryan's travel schedule. She'd laughed when I asked if everything was okay at home. "Mom, we're fine. Marriage isn't always fireworks, you know?" Her eyes had darted away for just a second. I'd noticed, but said nothing. Mothers learn to pick their battles.
Now that fleeting glance haunted me. I stood up slowly, walked to the window, and pressed my forehead against the cool glass. Condensation formed around my skin. How had I missed the signs? Sophia had always been my sensitive one, creative, dreamy, the girl who filled notebooks with stories and poems. She'd wanted to be a novelist once, before Ryan convinced her the practical path was better. Stable income, benefits, a future. Was this rebellion, loneliness, or something darker I couldn't yet see? The worst part wasn't even the betrayal of Ryan, though that stung deeply. It was the realization that my daughter, the child I had carried, nursed, stayed up nights worrying over during fevers and heartbreaks, was living a double life, and she had been carrying this weight alone, or at least without me. My phone buzzed again. A text from Sophia. "Hey, Mom, hope you're having a good day." I didn't reply. I couldn't. My fingers wouldn't move. Instead, I saved the voice message to a hidden folder, then deleted the notification as if that could erase what I'd heard. But the words echoed in my head on loop. "Last night with him. I think I'm falling for him." Rain continued to fall, steady and unrelenting, mirroring the storm building inside me. I had a choice now: delete everything and pretend ignorance, or dig deeper, confront her, protect her, or maybe, just maybe, uncover a truth that would change all of us forever. I chose the second path, because that's what mothers do when their child is drowning, even if the water is of her own making. The voice message played on repeat in my mind long after I silenced the phone. I stood frozen in my kitchen, the rag still lying on the floor where it had slipped from my fingers like a surrender flag. Outside, the rain had intensified, drumming against the roof and windows with a relentless rhythm that matched the pounding in my chest. Seattle rain has a way of making everything feel heavier, more inevitable. Today, it felt like the sky was crying for me because I couldn't yet cry for myself. I replayed the message one final time, lowering the volume so my own breathing wouldn't drown it out. Sophia's voice, my little girl's voice, sounded nothing like the polished, confident woman I had watched walk down the aisle 3 years earlier in that beautiful outdoor ceremony overlooking the sound. This voice was fractured, desperate, laced with guilt and something dangerously close to relief. Last night with him, God, it felt so real. The words lodged in my throat like a stone I couldn't swallow. My daughter was having an affair. The realization hit me in waves. First came disbelief, sharp and cold, like stepping into the freezing waters of Puget Sound in winter. Then anger, not at Sophia yet, but at the faceless him who had touched my child in ways her husband never could. Who was this man? How had he slipped into her life so deeply that she was falling for him? And Ryan, poor Ryan, thousands of miles away on another business trip, probably sitting in some sterile Tokyo conference room checking his watch, completely unaware that his marriage was unraveling through a mistaken voice note. I sank onto the bar stool again, my knees suddenly unreliable. The house felt too quiet, too large. The colonial I had shared with Tom for 29 years now echoed with absence. After his heart attack 8 years ago, I had learned to live alone,
filling the emptiness with garden clubs, book clubs, and weekly lunches with Sophia. But in that moment, the solitude pressed in like a living thing, whispering that I had failed as a mother. How had I not seen the cracks forming in my daughter's life? Memories flooded me uninvited. Sophia at 7, crying over a dead goldfish named Mr. Bubbles, her small hands clutching my shirt as I promised her we'd get another. Sophia at 16, staying up until 2 a.m. writing short stories in her notebook, her face glowing with that creative fire I had always
Encouraged. "You have a gift, baby," I used to tell her. "Don't let anyone dim it." Then college, where she met Ryan, tall, ambitious, from a solid East Coast family. He swept her off her feet with his stability, his clear 5-year plan. I had been relieved. Writers starve, I thought. Marriage to a man with a future would keep her safe. Safe. The word tasted bitter now. I forced myself to stand and walk to the living room. The old leather photo albums waited on the bottom shelf of the built-in bookcase. I pulled one out, its cover dusty from disuse, and flipped through the pages with trembling hands. There she was, baby Sophia with her tiny fist wrapped around my finger, toddler Sophia covered in birthday cake, teen Sophia with braces and that mischievous grin, wedding photos, Sophia radiant in white lace, Ryan looking proud and certain. In every picture, she looked happy, or at least I had convinced myself she did. But photographs lie. They capture frozen moments, not the silences between them. My phone buzzed on the kitchen island. I ignored it at first, but when it buzzed again, I walked back and checked. A text from Sophia. "Mom, just checking in. Ryan lands tomorrow night. Thinking of surprising him with that steak recipe you gave me. Love you."
The casual tone made my stomach twist. She had no idea I knew. Or did she? That playful, "love you," felt like a test, a probe to see if I had listened to the message. I typed back a simple, "Sounds wonderful, honey. Let me know how it goes," and set the phone down as if it might burn me. Night fell slowly, the rain never letting up. I tried to distract myself, made a cup of chamomile tea, turned on the gas fireplace, even attempted to read the latest thriller novel for my book club. The words blurred on the page. Every sentence reminded me of secrets and betrayal. Around 11 p.m., I gave up and went upstairs to my bedroom, the one I had once shared with Tom. The king-sized bed felt vast and cold. I lay there staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazily, replaying Sophia's words until they carved grooves in my brain. What was I supposed to do now? Call her and confront her directly? "Sophia, I accidentally heard your confession of infidelity. Care to explain?" The thought made me nauseous. Delete the message and pretend ignorance, letting her marriage continue its slow collapse? That felt like cowardice, or worse, complicity. No, I couldn't do nothing. Sophia was my only child. I had carried her for 9 months, walked the floors with her through colic nights, cheered at every soccer game and school play, held her through her first heartbreak when that boy in high school ghosted her. I knew her better than anyone. Or at least I thought I did. But this version of Sophia, the one whispering secrets to another man while her husband was away, felt like a stranger wearing my daughter's face. Around 2 a.m., sleep still refusing to come, I grabbed my laptop from the nightstand and opened it. The blue glow illuminated the dark room. I started innocently enough, scrolling through Sophia's Instagram. It was the usual curated perfection. Her and Ryan smiling on a rooftop in New York. Her in a sun hat doing a Napa tasting trip. Cozy couple selfies in their modern kitchen. Comments from friends. "You two are goals. Power couple." Every post screamed happiness. Yet the voice message told a different story. "I feel like I'm suffocating." I dug deeper, checking old posts from right after the wedding. There was a noticeable gap, almost 2 months with very few updates. I remembered her telling me she was settling into married life, Mom. It's a big adjustment. At the time, I had nodded understandingly. Now that gap felt ominous, like a missing chapter in a book where the real plot was hiding. I typed her name into Google with vague keywords. Sophia Hayes, Ryan. Seattle writer. Marcus. I didn't even know if that was his name yet, but the word him haunted me. Nothing incriminating surfaced. Of course not. My daughter had always been careful, even as a child. She hid her diary under her mattress. She deleted browser history before handing me her laptop for fixes. The first real crack in my trust appeared then, not in Sophia, but in my own perception of her life. I had believed the surface story because it was easier, because believing otherwise would mean admitting I had let my daughter drift away while I was busy grieving Tom, tending my garden, and convincing myself that quiet afternoons were enough. As the rain finally began to ease toward dawn, I closed the laptop and whispered into the darkness, "What have you gotten yourself into, Sophia?" The house offered no answer, only the distant sound of water dripping from the gutters. That was the moment the first real fracture formed in the perfect image I had held of my daughter. And like any crack in a foundation, once it starts, it only grows wider, until the entire structure risks collapsing. I didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. The hidden truth waiting beneath the surface was far darker, far more tangled than a simple affair. And when it finally surfaced, it would change not just Sophia's marriage, but the very relationship between a mother and daughter I thought was unbreakable.
That night, sleep became a stranger. I lay in the king-sized bed that still carried the faint memory of Tom's cologne on the pillows I could never bring myself to replace, staring at the slowly rotating ceiling fan. The rain had finally eased into a soft mist, but the quiet only amplified the storm inside my head. Sophia's voice kept replaying on an endless loop. "Last night with him. I think I'm falling for him." Each repetition carved a little deeper into my heart, turning disbelief into a gnawing ache that refused to let me rest. Around 3 in the morning, I gave up pretending I could sleep. I slipped out of bed, pulled on my old fleece robe, and padded downstairs to the living room. The house felt colder than usual, the hardwood floors chilly under my bare feet. I flicked on the table lamp, its warm glow casting long shadows across the walls, lined with family photos. There she was again, Sophia at every stage of her life, smiling back at me as if daring me to question the perfect narrative I had constructed. I pulled out the dusty leather photo albums from the bottom shelf of the built-in bookcase, the same ones I had glanced at earlier. This time, I didn't just flip through them quickly. I sat cross-legged on the couch like I used to when Sophia was little, spreading the albums open around me like evidence in a trial. Baby photos, first steps, kindergarten graduation with that oversized construction paper cap, middle school soccer games where she scored the winning goal and ran straight into my arms, high school prom, her in a deep blue dress that made her eyes pop, looking both excited and terrified.
Then the college years. Sophia at the University of Washington, her face more mature, that creative spark still burning bright. There was one photo from her senior thesis reading, her standing at a podium, notes in hand, while a tall, distinguished man with salt and pepper hair stood beside her, smiling proudly. Her writing professor, I remembered vaguely, Marcus something. He had been a big influence on her. She used to talk about his classes with such passion. I linger at that photo longer than I should have. Something about his expression felt too intimate, too knowing, even back then. Shaking off the thought, I turned the page to her wedding. Sophia radiant in white, Ryan looking every bit the successful, stable husband I had prayed she would find. Family gathered under strings of lights by the water, toasts echoing with laughter and future hopes. In every captured moment, my daughter looked happy, loved, secure. But photographs are liars. They freeze joy while hiding the cracks that form in between. I closed the albums and reached for my laptop on the coffee table. The screen's blue light felt harsh in the dim room as I opened it. My hands trembled slightly as I typed her name into the search bar. Sophia Hayes, Seattle. Nothing new, just her LinkedIn profile, a few freelance writing clips, and old university announcements. I tried pairing it with Ryan's name. Their wedding announcement from the local paper popped up, along with a few charity event photos where they appeared as the perfect young couple. Everything looked so normal, too normal. It made the voice message feel like a hallucination, except I knew it wasn't.
I scrolled further back in time, checking her Instagram archive. There it was again, the strange 2-month gap right after the wedding. Almost no posts, no stories, barely any likes or comments. When I had asked her about it at the time, she had brushed it off with a light laugh. "Mom, newlywed life is exhausting. We were just nesting, figuring things out." I had accepted that explanation because it was convenient, because believing my daughter was struggling so soon after saying "I do" would have meant admitting that maybe Ryan wasn't the perfect match I thought he was. Now that gap felt like a black hole, sucking in all my assumptions. I clicked on individual posts from that period. One photo from a month after the wedding showed Sophia alone on their balcony, staring out at the lake with a distant expression. The caption read, "Grateful for new beginnings," but her eyes, they looked hollow, as if the smile didn't reach them. I zoomed in until the pixels blurred. Had she been pregnant then? Had she lost the baby she never told me about? Or was something else weighing on her? My mind raced through every possibility. An affair that started during the honeymoon phase? Post-wedding depression? Or had this him been lingering in the shadows even before the marriage? The questions multiplied until my head throbbed. I stood up, paced the living room, and then walked to the kitchen to make another cup of chamomile tea. As the kettle whistled, I leaned against the counter and whispered to the empty room, "Sophia, what aren't you telling me?" The tea did little to calm my nerves. Back on the couch, I opened a new tab and started typing more specific searches. Sophia Hayes' affair felt ridiculous, even as I deleted it immediately. Instead, I searched for her old university connections, the writing program at UW, faculty lists. There he was, Marcus Hale, associate professor of creative writing, divorced, mid-40s, published a couple of literary novels that received moderate praise. His faculty photo showed the same charismatic smile I remembered from graduation. Had Sophia stayed in touch with him after college? She had mentioned him occasionally over the years. Marcus loved that piece I wrote, or he gave me great feedback on my portfolio. I had never thought much of it. Professors mentor students all the time. But now, the memory of that thesis reading photo haunted me, the way he stood so close to her. Dawn was breaking by the time I finally closed the laptop, the gray Seattle light filtering through the curtains. My eyes burned from lack of sleep, but my mind felt clearer in its confusion. I wasn't ready to confront Sophia yet, not until I understood more, not until I could separate my fear from the facts. I needed to see her life up close, the house she shared with Ryan, the routine she kept when he was away. Maybe then the pieces would start fitting together. As I climbed the stairs to try for an hour of sleep before the day fully began, one thought settled heavily in my chest. My daughter was hiding something much bigger than a momentary lapse. The first crack had appeared, and now I was determined to trace it back to its source, no matter how painful the truth might be. Because that's what mothers do when they sense their child is lost. We dig, we search, we refuse to look away. Even when the past we uncover threatens to rewrite everything we thought we knew about the person we love most. The morning after my sleepless night felt surreal, like I was moving through someone else's life. Gray light filtered through the kitchen windows as I stood at the counter, nursing a strong cup of coffee that did nothing to chase away the exhaustion clinging to my bones. The rain had returned, softer now, a persistent drizzle that blurred the edges of the backyard cedar trees. Everything looked the same as yesterday. The polished marble, the family photos on the fridge, the half-read thriller novel on the island. Yet nothing felt the same. Sophia's voice message had cracked open a door I could no longer close, and behind it lurked the shadowy figure of him. I kept replaying her words in my head while the coffee cooled in my mug. He touches me like he actually sees me. Not just physical, emotional, intimate. The kind of connection that goes beyond stolen nights and secret texts. Whoever this man was, he had gotten inside my daughter's heart, and that terrified me more than the affair itself. By mid-morning, I couldn't sit still any longer. I needed answers, even if they came in small, painful pieces. I opened my laptop again at the kitchen table, the steam from my fresh coffee curling upward like ghosts. This time, I wasn't aimless. I typed Marcus Hale into the search bar, Professor, Creative Writing, University of Washington. His faculty page loaded first,
professional headshot showing a handsome man in his mid-40s, salt-and-pepper hair, sharp jawline, eyes that seemed to hold stories. Published 2 novels, several short stories in literary magazines. Divorced 3 years ago. No children listed. I clicked through his public social media. LinkedIn showed connections to dozens of former students, including Sophia's name in an old recommendation letter he had written for her. Instagram was more curated. Book launches, campus events, occasional photos from writing retreats in the San Juan Islands. In one post from 2 years ago, there was a group shot of alumni and faculty. Sophia stood near the edge, laughing, a glass of wine in her hand. Marcus was beside her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. The caption read, "Reunions remind us why we write." My stomach twisted. It looked innocent enough to anyone else. To a mother who had heard her daughter's trembling confession, it felt like evidence. I spent the next hour digging deeper, cross-referencing dates. Ryan's travel schedule was easy to track. He posted about his trips on LinkedIn with professional pride. Tokyo last week, London the month before, New York frequently. Sophia's social media showed her solo adventures during those times. Solo coffee dates, yoga classes, me-time captions that now sounded like cover stories. One photo from 6 months ago caught my eye. Sophia at a bookstore reading, the same indie shop near the university where Marcus often hosted events. She was in the front row. No Ryan in sight. The coincidences piled up like storm clouds. By early afternoon, the rain had picked up again, turning the world outside into a watercolor wash of greens and grays. I decided I couldn't stay in the house any longer. I needed to see her world up close. I grabbed my keys, slipped on a waterproof jacket, and drove the 15 minutes to Sophia's neighborhood in the hills of Bellevue. Her modern cedar and glass home sat on a quiet, tree-lined street, with perfectly manicured lawns and discreet luxury cars in every driveway. I parked 3 houses down under the cover of a large Douglas fir, far enough not to be obvious, but close enough to watch. The silver BMW she and Ryan shared sat in the driveway. Lights glowed softly in the living room, even though it was daytime. I sat there for nearly an hour, heater on low, radio off, my hands gripping the steering wheel. Nothing moved. No deliveries, no visitors, just the steady drizzle streaking my windshield. Then, around 7 p.m., as the sky darkened into early evening, a black Audi pulled slowly up the street and stopped in front of her house. My breath caught. A tall man stepped out, collar turned up against the rain, dark hair, tailored wool coat. He didn't knock or ring the bell. He pulled out a key, unlocked the front door, and let himself inside like he belonged there, like he had done it many times before. The door closed behind him with a quiet click that I imagined more than heard. 2 hours passed in agonizing slowness. I stayed glued to my seat, heart hammering, eyes fixed on the house. Lights moved from the living room to the kitchen, then upstairs. At one point, I thought I saw 2 silhouettes against the window shade, close together, then apart. My imagination filled in the blanks with images I didn't want. Whispered conversations, hands touching, my daughter laughing in a way she hadn't with Ryan in years. When the man finally emerged just after 9, he paused on the porch, looking back at the house for a long moment before walking to his car. As the Audi passed under the streetlight, I caught a clear glimpse of his face. Marcus Hale.
There was no doubt now. The same professor from the photos. Older, but unmistakable. Charismatic, confident. The kind of man who made vulnerable young women feel seen. I waited until his taillights disappeared around the corner before I let out the breath I'd been holding. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the gear shift. I drove home on autopilot, the wipers slashing across the windshield in rhythm with my racing thoughts. How long had this been going on? Since college? Right after the wedding? During one of Ryan's long absences when Sophia felt invisible in her own marriage? The betrayal burned hotter now. Not just that my daughter was sleeping with another man, but that the man was someone who had once held authority over her, a mentor, someone who should have protected her boundaries, not crossed them. And Sophia, my sensitive, imaginative girl who once dreamed of writing novels, had fallen into this tangled web so deeply she was confessing love in a mistaken voice message. Back in my kitchen that night, I poured a glass of wine with unsteady hands and stared at the rain-streaked window. The shadowy him now had a face, a name, a history. But knowing brought no relief. Instead, it opened up 100 new questions, each darker than the last. What secrets was Marcus Hale hiding? What promises had he made to my daughter? And most terrifying of all, what else was Sophia keeping from me that I hadn't even begun to uncover? The first crack had widened into a chasm. I was no longer just a worried mother. I was a detective in my own daughter's hidden life, and the trail I was following led straight into shadows I feared might swallow us both. As I climbed the stairs to bed, one thought echoed louder than the rain. This was only the beginning. The real truth was still buried deeper, waiting to surface when I least expected it. The image of Marcus Hale letting himself into my daughter's house with his own key burned behind my eyes like a brand. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed them, I saw the black Audi gliding up the quiet Bellevue street, the confident way he walked, the way he didn't even knock. By dawn, the rain had turned into a thick fog that wrapped around my house like a shroud, mirroring the confusion and dread that had settled deep in my chest. I knew I couldn't stop now. The voice message had cracked open a door, and seeing Marcus walk through Sophia's front door had shoved me all the way through it. I was no longer just a worried mother. I was hunting for the truth, even if that truth threatened to destroy the fragile image I still held of my daughter's life. After forcing down some toast and another strong coffee, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open. This time I went further. I searched property records, public divorce filings, anything that might give me a clearer picture of Marcus Hale. His divorce from 3 years ago had been messy. His ex-wife, a corporate lawyer named Laura, had cited emotional infidelity and inappropriate relationships with students. The court documents were sealed, but the headlines from local blogs were enough. There were whispers, rumors, nothing proven. Classic academic predator, I thought bitterly. Charming, intellectual, always ready with the right quote from a novel to make a vulnerable woman feel special.
My hands shook as I typed Sophia's name alongside his. Nothing direct surfaced, no joint photos, no tagged posts, but the timeline fit too perfectly. Ryan's travel calendar, which Sophia had once shared with me for family planning, showed he was gone at least 2 weeks every month. Those were the exact windows when Sophia's solo activities spiked on social media. Bookstore events, writing workshops, inspiration days, all of them conveniently near the university campus where Marcus still taught part-time. I needed more than digital breadcrumbs. I needed to see the pattern in real life. The next 3 days became a blur of quiet obsession. I drove past Sophia's house every evening, parking in different spots along the tree-lined street so I wouldn't draw attention. On the second night, the black Audi appeared again at 6:45 p.m. Marcus let himself in. He left at 10:12 p.m. On the third night, the same routine. Arrival just after dark, departure 2.5 hours later. Each time, the upstairs bedroom light flicked on shortly after he entered. Each time, I sat in my car with the engine off, heater barely running, my breath fogging the windows as the Pacific Northwest chill seeped into my bones. I felt like a ghost haunting my own daughter's life. During the day, I tried to act normal. I went to the grocery store, answered a call from my book club friend Diane, even watered the garden despite the constant drizzle. But my mind was never fully present. Every laugh I forced felt hollow. Every casual conversation with neighbors carried an undercurrent of panic. "How's Sophia doing?" they would ask. "Great," I would reply, smiling until my cheeks hurt. "She and Ryan are doing wonderfully." Lies. All of it built on the lie Sophia had been living. On the fourth day, I took it one step further. I waited until mid-morning when I knew Sophia usually went to her favorite yoga studio in downtown Bellevue. I drove to her neighborhood again, but this time I didn't park far away. I walked right up to the house, heart hammering so loudly I was sure the neighbors could hear it. Using the spare key she had given me years ago in case of emergencies, I let myself in. The house smelled like her, vanilla candle, expensive diffuser oils, and the faint trace of Ryan's sandalwood cologne that never quite overpowered the space when he was gone. Everything looked perfect on the surface: white marble counters, modern gray furniture, abstract art on the walls that Sophia had chosen. But I wasn't here for the decor. I moved quickly but carefully through the rooms. In the home office upstairs, I found her laptop closed on the desk. I hesitated only a second before opening it. She still used the same password she'd had since college, our old golden retriever's name. The screen lit up. I scanned her recent emails, her calendar, her messages. There it was.
A recurring calendar entry labeled simply MH writing session every time Ryan was out of town, sometimes twice a week. The location was always listed as home. In her deleted messages folder, I found fragments she hadn't fully erased. Can't stop thinking about last night. You make me feel like the woman I forgot I could be. And one that made my blood run cold. What if we stopped hiding? I didn't read more. I couldn't. My vision blurred with angry tears as I closed the laptop and wiped the keyboard with my sleeve, out of some instinctive need to erase my presence. As I left the house, locking the door behind me, I felt both victorious and sickened. I had proof now. Not just suspicion, tangible evidence that my daughter was deeply entangled with her former professor. That evening, back in my own kitchen, I poured myself a glass of Cabernet and stared at the rain sliding down the window panes. The trail I was following was leading somewhere dangerous. Marcus wasn't just a fling. He had become a fixture in Sophia's life, filling the emotional voids Ryan's constant travel had created. But there was something else nagging at me, something darker beneath the surface of this affair. Why did Sophia sound so terrified in that voice message? Not just guilty, afraid. What hold did Marcus have over her? Was it only emotional, or had it crossed into something more manipulative? I set the wine glass down and looked at the family photo on the wall. Sophia at her college graduation, standing between me and Tom, Marcus visible in the background of the crowd. That photo now felt like a warning I had missed years ago. The shadowy him had a name, a routine, and access to my daughter's home and heart. But I sensed the real story was still hidden deeper, layers upon layers of secrets that went far beyond stolen afternoons and whispered promises. I was following the trail, step by careful step, and I was terrified of where it would ultimately lead. The confirmation that Marcus Hale had a key to my daughter's house and a recurring place in her calendar hit me like a physical blow. For 2 days after my secret visit to Sophia's home, I moved through my own house like a ghost, making tea I didn't drink, staring at the rain-soaked garden without really seeing it, replaying every detail I had uncovered. The fragments of deleted messages haunted me most. You make me feel like the woman I forgot I could be. What if we stopped hiding? My daughter wasn't just having an affair. She was emotionally drowning in one, and I had missed every warning sign. On the third night, sleep still evading me, I sat in the dark living room with only the gas fireplace flickering. The old graduation photo album lay open on my lap. There it was again, the image from Sophia's college graduation ceremony 4 years earlier. She stood beaming in her cap and gown between Tom and me, her smile wide and full of future dreams. In the background, slightly out of focus but unmistakable, was Marcus Hale. He wasn't just clapping politely like the other faculty members. He was watching her with an intensity that now sent chills down my spine. That was the moment it clicked.
The man who had let himself into Sophia's house wasn't a stranger. He was painfully, sickeningly familiar. Marcus Hale had been her senior thesis advisor, the charismatic professor who had praised her writing, encouraged her to apply for MFA programs, and written her glowing recommendation letters. I remembered meeting him briefly at the graduation reception. He had shaken my hand a little too long, his eyes warm and knowing as he told me, "Your daughter has a rare voice, Mrs. Hayes. She's going to do great things." At the time, I had felt flattered. Now those words felt like grooming, wrapped in literary praise. How long had this been going on? Had it started innocently during office hours in her senior year? Had it simmered quietly after graduation, flaring up once Ryan's travel schedule left Sophia alone and vulnerable in her new marriage? Or worse, had Marcus been waiting in the shadows the entire time, patient and calculating? I closed the album with a snap and stood up, pacing the living room as the fire cast dancing shadows on the walls. The realization brought a fresh wave of nausea. My daughter hadn't fallen for some random coworker or stranger from a bar. She had become entangled with a man who had once held power and authority over her as her professor, someone who should have maintained clear boundaries, someone old enough to know better.
The betrayal cut in layers. First, Sophia's deception, then Ryan's ignorance, and now this, Marcus exploiting the mentor-student relationship that I had once trusted. The next morning, I drove to the university campus under the pretense of visiting the library for a book club recommendation. The cherry blossoms were just starting to fade, petals scattered across the wet sidewalks like pale confetti. I walked the paths Sophia had once walked, past the English department building where Marcus still taught. I even lingered near the cafe where students and faculty gathered, hoping for a glimpse, though I wasn't sure what I would do if I saw him. Instead, I sat on a bench and let memories wash over me. Sophia coming home from class her senior year, eyes bright, talking nonstop about how Professor Hale had dissected her short story in workshop and helped her find its true heart. "He really gets me, Mom," she had said, not like the other professors who just want formulaic stuff. I had smiled and encouraged her, proud that she had found such a supportive mentor. Now that pride tasted like ash. By afternoon, the fog had lifted slightly, but the heaviness in my chest remained. I drove home and spent hours at the kitchen table organizing everything I knew so far. Timeline on a yellow legal pad. Senior year, Marcus as thesis advisor.
Post-graduation, occasional mentions of feedback for Marcus. Wedding, Marcus not invited but sent a generous gift. 2 months after wedding, the suspicious gap in Sophia's posting. Ryan's travel schedule, increasing absences. Last 2 years, writing sessions with MH becoming regular. The pattern was clear and devastating. This wasn't a recent fling born of loneliness. It had roots going back years, slowly deepening like ivy cracking through foundation stones. That evening, my phone rang. Sophia's name flashed on the screen. My heart jumped. I let it ring twice before answering, forcing my voice to sound normal. "Hi, honey. How are you?" "Mom." Her tone was bright, almost too bright. "I'm good. Just calling to see if you want to grab lunch tomorrow. Ryan's back for a few days, but then he's off to Singapore again. I hate eating alone." There it was, the casual mention of Ryan's travel, the subtle invitation to keep up appearances. I wanted to scream through the phone. "I know about Marcus. I know he has a key. I know you're falling for him." But I held back. Confronting her now without understanding the full depth could push her further into his arms or make her shut down completely.
Instead, I agreed to lunch. "I'd love that, sweetheart. How about that little cafe near the lake?" After we hung up, I sat staring at the phone. Her voice had been the same as always, warm, loving, slightly distracted. But now I heard the cracks beneath it, the forced lightness, the way she mentioned Ryan's trip like it was nothing, when we both knew it left her vulnerable. Marcus wasn't just a lover. He was becoming a habit, a dangerous comfort that filled the emotional voids Ryan's ambition had created. And Sophia, my sensitive dreamer who once filled notebooks with stories of love and longing, had mistaken that comfort for destiny. As night fell and the rain returned in steady sheets, I stood at the window watching water stream down the glass. The familiar stranger had a name, a history, and a hold on my daughter that went back further than I had ever imagined. But I still sensed there was more, something darker, more tangled that Sophia was terrified to reveal even to herself. The miscarriage she had mentioned only in passing as one of those things. The way her laughter had grown forced over the past year. The guilt that had seeped into her voice message like poison. I was getting closer to the truth. And the closer I got, the more I feared that when it finally broke open, it wouldn't just crack our family. It might shatter it beyond repair. I couldn't carry the weight of what I knew any longer. 3 days after my lunch with Sophia,
where I smiled across the cafe table while she chatted about Ryan's upcoming Singapore trip and her latest freelance project, the truth had become a living thing inside me, clawing to get out. Every polite, "How are things at home, honey?" I asked, felt like a lie. Every time she answered, "Great, Mom," with that too bright smile, another crack formed in my heart. I waited until Ryan was confirmed to be overseas again. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, when the rain was coming down in heavy, wind-driven sheets, I drove to Sophia's house unannounced. The wipers on my car slashed back and forth furiously, but they couldn't clear the storm building in my chest. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I had rehearsed a dozen different ways to start the conversation, but none of them felt right. How do you tell your daughter you know she's having an affair with her former professor? I parked in the driveway this time, right behind her silver BMW. The rain pounded on the roof as I sat there for a long minute, gathering courage. Finally, I grabbed my umbrella and walked to the front door. I didn't knock gently. I rang the doorbell twice, sharp and insistent.
Sophia opened the door wearing black yoga pants and an oversized cream sweater, her hair pulled into a messy bun. She looked tired, beautiful in that effortless way she always had, but there were shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't fully hide. When she saw me standing there, drenched despite the umbrella, her smile faltered. "Mom, what are you doing here? Is everything okay?" I stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, rain dripping from my coat onto her polished hardwood floors. The house smelled of vanilla and fresh coffee, but underneath it I caught the faint trace of a man's cologne that wasn't Ryan's. My stomach turned. "We need to talk, Sophia." She closed the door behind me, her movements suddenly cautious. "Okay, you're scaring me. Did something happen? Is it about Grandma?" I shook my head and walked straight into the living room, my wet shoes leaving faint prints. I turned to face her, the umbrella still clutched in my hand like a weapon. "I heard the voice message, Sophia, the one you meant for Ryan." Her face drained of color so fast I thought she might faint. She took one step back until her hips hit the edge of the marble kitchen island. Her mouth opened, but no words came out at first. Then, in a whisper so soft it barely rose above the sound of the rain hammering the windows, she said, "Mom, it was a mistake. I was upset. It was just—" "Don't lie to me." My voice cracked, but stayed steady. "I heard every word. Last night with him, he touches me like he actually sees me. You said you're falling for him, and I know who he is." The silence that followed was deafening. Outside, thunder rumbled low in the distance, as if the sky itself was reacting to the tension in the room. Sophia's eyes filled with tears, but there was something else there too. Relief mixed with terror, like a secret she had carried for years was finally being dragged into the light. How did you know it was Marcus?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Because I saw him, Sophia. I saw him let himself into your house with his own key. I saw the calendar entries. I saw the messages you thought you deleted. He's been coming here for months, maybe longer. Your old professor, the man who was supposed to mentor you, not seduce you." She sank onto one of the bar stools, covering her face with both hands. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. When she finally looked up, mascara streaked down her cheeks. "It started 2 years ago, Ryan. He was gone so much. Singapore, Tokyo, New York, sometimes 3 weeks at a time. I was lonely, Mom. The house felt like a cage. Marcus reached out after an alumni event, just coffee at first. He remembered my writing. He listened. He made me feel seen again, not like a wife who was just waiting. He made me feel like the girl who used to dream about being a novelist."
I set the umbrella down and moved closer, but I didn't touch her yet. "And the miscarriage?" I asked quietly. "The one you told us was just one of those things 6 months after the wedding. Was that his?" Sophia's head snapped up, eyes wide with shock. For a moment, she looked like the little girl who had been caught stealing cookies. Then the dam broke completely. Yes, she breathed. It was Marcus's. Ryan and we were trying, but that night, I was with Marcus. I got pregnant and lost it at 10 weeks. I was terrified. I didn't know how to tell anyone. Ryan thought it was his. I let him believe that because I was ashamed. And Marcus, he was there for me after. He held me when I cried. He said we could have a future together. Thunder cracked overhead, lightning flashing through the big glass windows and illuminating her tear-streaked face. The rain pounded harder, as if trying to drown out her confession. But it's complicated, Mom, she continued, her voice rising with desperation. Marcus has his own problems, money issues from the divorce, his ex-wife digging into his past. He wants me to leave Ryan, but I'm scared. The prenup is brutal. I have almost nothing in my own name. And part of me still loves Ryan, or at least the life we built. I don't know what to do anymore. Every time Ryan kisses me goodnight, I feel like I'm disappearing.
I finally stepped forward and pulled my daughter into my arms. She collapsed against me, sobbing like she hadn't since she was a child. I held her tight, stroking her wet hair, my own tears mixing with hers. But even as I comforted her, a colder anger burned inside me. Anger at Marcus for exploiting her vulnerability, anger at Ryan for being absent, and anger at myself for not noticing sooner. The confrontation I had dreaded had finally happened, and it was every bit as painful as I had imagined. Yet beneath the pain, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The hidden truth was beginning to surface, messy and ugly and real. But as Sophia cried in my arms while the rain lashed the windows, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was still only part of the story. There were deeper layers, secrets Marcus held, truths Sophia was still too afraid to say out loud. And when the full storm finally broke, I feared it would leave nothing standing.
Sophia clung to me like she was drowning, her sobs echoing through the modern, open-plan living room while thunder rolled outside. The rain hammered the large glass windows with such force, it sounded like the sky was trying to break in. I held my daughter tighter, stroking her hair the way I had when she was small and nightmares woke her in the middle of the night. But this wasn't a nightmare that would fade with morning light. This was real, and far more complicated than I had allowed myself to imagine. We stayed like that for a long time, mother and daughter wrapped in each other while the storm raged. Eventually, her crying slowed to shaky breaths. I guided her to the oversized gray sectional, and we sat down together. She pulled her knees up to her chest, looking smaller than her 28 years. "Tell me everything, Sophia," I said quietly, my voice steady, even though my heart was fracturing. "No more half-truths. No more hiding. I need to know what's really been happening." She wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her sweater and stared at the rain-streaked windows for a long moment before she began. Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper at first. "It started innocently enough. After the wedding, Ryan threw himself into work. He was traveling constantly, building his career, he said. I was alone in this big house most nights. Marcus texted me one evening, just checking in after an alumni event. We met for coffee, then drinks. He listened when I talked about feeling invisible. He read the stories I was still writing in secret and told me I had real talent. For the first time in months, I felt alive." She paused, swallowing hard. "Then one night, when Ryan was in London, it happened. I slept with him. I told myself it was a one-time mistake, but it wasn't. It became something more. He made me feel desired, seen, creative again. Ryan loves me, but he's always somewhere else, mentally, physically. Marcus was here." I listened without interrupting, though every word felt like a knife twisting deeper. My perfect, sensitive daughter, the girl who once dreamed of writing novels, was confessing an emotional and physical affair that had been going on for over 2 years.
"But there's more, Mom," she continued, her voice cracking. 6 months after the wedding, I got pregnant. I was almost certain it was Marcus's. We had been careful with Ryan, but that week I was with Marcus more than once. When I miscarried at 10 weeks, I was devastated. I went to the hospital alone. I told Ryan and you it was just one of those things, a random loss. Ryan held me and said we'd try again when the time was right, but I was carrying this secret guilt. Marcus was the only one who knew the truth. He came over after, held me while I cried for hours. That's when I think I really started falling for him. Lightning flashed, illuminating her pale face. The thunder that followed felt like the house itself was groaning under the weight of her words. Marcus started talking about a future together, she went on. He said he would leave his complicated life behind if I left Ryan. But he has his own mess, financial problems from the divorce, his ex-wife threatening to expose old rumors about him and students. He needs money, and part of me wonders if that's why he's pushing so hard. I feel trapped. The prenup Ryan made me sign before the wedding is ironclad. If I leave, I get almost nothing. No house, very little alimony. I'd have to start over completely, and I'm terrified I'd lose myself in the process.
She reached for my hand, squeezing it tightly. Every time Ryan comes home, I play the perfect wife. I cook his favorite meals, smile for the photos he posts, tell him I love him. But inside, I feel like I'm disappearing piece by piece. I started writing again in secret. Dark, honest stories about a woman trapped between two lives. Marcus read them and said they were my best work yet. But the guilt, it's eating me alive. That voice message you heard? I was going to send it to Ryan when he landed. I was finally going to ask for a divorce. Then I accidentally sent it to you instead. I sat there, stunned into silence for several long seconds. The hidden truth was far uglier and more tangled than a simple affair. My daughter had lost a baby that might not have been her husband's, lied about it, and allowed another man to become her emotional anchor while staying married for financial security. The layers of deception ran so deep, I felt dizzy. Yet, as I looked at Sophia, her red-rimmed eyes, her trembling hands, I didn't feel only anger. I felt profound sadness. She had been lonely, lost, and searching for the creative, passionate version of herself she thought marriage had buried. Marcus had exploited that vulnerability. Ryan's absence had created the vacuum. And I, her mother, had been too wrapped up in my own quiet widowhood to notice how much my daughter was struggling.
I pulled her close again. We'll figure this out together, sweetheart. But you can't keep living like this. The secrets are destroying you. They're destroying all of us. She nodded against my shoulder, fresh tears soaking my blouse. I know, Mom. I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to find out this way. I thought if I could just keep the pieces together a little longer. Outside, the rain began to ease slightly, but the storm inside the house was only intensifying. I held my daughter and thought about the road ahead. Conversations with Ryan, lawyers, therapy, the painful untangling of a marriage built on lies. I wondered how much damage had already been done that could never be repaired. As the thunder faded into distant rumbles, one clear thought settled over me. The voice message that had shaken me to my core had only been the tip of the iceberg. The hidden truth was now fully exposed, messy and heartbreaking. But I still couldn't shake the feeling that there was one more layer, one final secret that Sophia hadn't yet revealed, something even Marcus didn't fully control, something that could change everything once again. For now, though, I simply held my daughter in the aftermath of the storm, knowing that the real healing and the real breaking had only just begun. The storm outside had quieted to a steady drizzle, but inside Sophia's house, the real tempest was only beginning. We sat on the sectional for what felt like hours, the weight of her confessions hanging heavy in the air between us. I held her hand, my thumb tracing slow circles on her skin, the way I used to when she was little and scared of thunder. But this time,
no amount of motherly comfort could make the truth disappear. Around 9:30 p.m., headlights swept across the front windows. Sophia stiffened beside me. "Ryan's flight landed early," she whispered, her voice thick with panic. "He wasn't supposed to be home until tomorrow morning." My stomach dropped. I had imagined this moment in a dozen different ways, but never with Ryan walking through the door while my daughter's eyes were still red from crying and the air still smelled of secrets. The front door opened. Ryan stepped inside, rolling his carry-on suitcase behind him, his tailored suit slightly rumpled from the long flight. He looked tired but happy until he saw the two of us sitting there in the dim light, faces streaked with tears. "Eleanor? Sophia? What's going on?" His voice was cautious, the easy smile fading from his face. Sophia stood up slowly, her hands twisting together. "Ryan, we need to talk." He set his suitcase down and loosened his tie, eyes moving between us. "Did someone die? Is it your mom, Eleanor?"
No, I said quietly, standing beside my daughter. It's not that kind of emergency. The three of us moved to the living room, like actors in a play none of us wanted to perform. Ryan sank into the armchair across from us, his broad shoulders tense. Sophia remained standing for a moment, then sat on the edge of the couch, close enough that our knees touched. I made a mistake, Sophia began, her voice trembling. A big one. Mom heard a voice message I meant to send to you. It was about someone else. Ryan's face went very still, the kind of stillness that comes right before a storm breaks. Someone else? Sophia nodded, tears spilling over again. His name is Marcus Hale. He was my writing professor in college. It started 2 years ago. You were traveling so much, and I felt so alone. I didn't plan for it to happen, but it did, and it kept happening.
This silence that followed was excruciating. Ryan stared at her, his jaw tight, eyes narrowing as the words sank in. I watched the emotions cross his face: confusion, disbelief, then a deep, raw hurt that made my chest ache. "You slept with your old professor?" His voice was low, almost dangerous, while I was out building a life for us. "It wasn't just physical," Sophia whispered. "I thought I was falling for him. He made me feel seen, creative, alive, things I hadn't felt in our marriage for a long time." Ryan let out a bitter laugh that contained no humor. "Seen? I gave you this house, this life, everything you wanted. I worked 80-hour weeks so you could write and travel and do whatever made you happy, and you repay me by fucking your professor?" I winced at the crude word, but I stayed silent. This wasn't my fight to enter yet. Sophia flinched, but kept going, the full truth pouring out in a rush. "There's more. 6 months after the wedding, I got pregnant. I lost the baby at 10 weeks. I told you it was just bad luck, but it wasn't yours, Ryan. It was Marcus's. I was too scared to tell you. I let you believe it was ours because I didn't want to lose you. Or this life."
Ryan's face drained of color. He stood up abruptly, pacing to the window and back, running both hands through his hair. "You lied about the miscarriage? You let me grieve a child that wasn't even mine?" "I was terrified," Sophia cried. "The prenup, your career. I thought if I could just keep everything together." "Keep everything together?" Ryan's voice rose, cracking with pain. "You've been living a double life for 2 years, sneaking around with some washed-up professor while I was on planes trying to secure our future. And now you're telling me our marriage has been built on lies?" He stopped pacing and looked directly at me. "Did you know any of this before tonight, Eleanor?" I shook my head. "I only heard the voice message a few days ago. I started piecing things together after that. I saw Marcus coming here. I confronted Sophia this evening." Ryan turned back to Sophia, his expression a mixture of heartbreak and cold anger. "How long exactly?" 2 years, she admitted, barely audible, but it got serious in the last year. Ryan nodded slowly, as if committing the timeline to memory. He didn't yell, he didn't throw things. That made it worse somehow. The quiet devastation in his eyes was more painful than any outburst could have been.
I knew something was wrong, he said finally, his voice hollow. You've been distant for months. The forced smiles, the way you pulled away when I touched you. I thought it was stress, work, maybe depression. I even suggested we go to counseling last month, remember? You said you were fine. He walked to the hallway closet and pulled out a duffel bag. Sophia stood up quickly. Ryan, please, we can talk about this. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I want anymore, but I don't want to lose you like this. He paused, bag in hand, and looked at her with profound sadness. You already lost me, Sophia. The woman I married wouldn't have done this. The woman I loved wouldn't have lied about our baby. He turned to me one last time. Thank you for being here, Eleanor. I know this isn't easy for you either. But this is between us now. I need some time.
Without another word, he walked out the front door into the drizzle, the wheels of his suitcase clicking behind him. The door closed with a soft finality that echoed through the house. Sophia collapsed onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably. I sat beside her and pulled her into my arms again, rocking her gently as she cried. Outside, the rain continued its steady rhythm, indifferent to the wreckage inside. That night marked the breaking point. Ryan chipped into a hotel downtown. Sophia slept in the guest room, curled up like a child. I stayed on the couch, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every moment of the confrontation. The marriage I had once believed was perfect was over. My daughter's secrets had finally torn everything apart. But as I lay there in the dark, listening to the rain, I couldn't escape the nagging feeling that even now, something remained unsaid. Some final hidden truth that could still change everything. The breaking point had come. Now we had to figure out how to survive the pieces.
The weeks that followed Ryan's departure felt like walking through fog, thick, disorienting, and impossible to see clearly through. Divorce proceedings began quietly, almost too quietly for something that had once been a marriage filled with hope and carefully curated Instagram photos. Lawyers exchanged emails. Assets were listed. Sophia moved through her modern Bellevue house like a ghost, packing away pieces of the life she had built on lies. I drove between my colonial home and hers almost daily, bringing groceries, sitting with her through long silences, and holding her when the guilt became too heavy to carry alone. Ryan was generous, far more than the ironclad prenup required. He didn't fight for the house or demand everything back. In one calm but devastating conversation over coffee at a neutral cafe near Lake Washington, he told Sophia he wanted her to have a clean start, even if it came at his expense. I loved the woman I thought you were, he said quietly, stirring his black coffee without looking at her. Maybe one day I'll forgive you, but I can't forget. He moved into a sleek downtown Seattle apartment with views of the Space Needle, throwing himself deeper into work, as if the long hours could erase the betrayal.
Marcus Hale disappeared from Sophia's life almost as quickly as he had entered it. After she finally sent him a long, tearful message ending everything, he tried calling twice. When she didn't answer, he stopped. I later learned through quiet research that his ex-wife had reopened old complaints at the university, and he had taken a sudden leave of absence. Good riddance, I thought bitterly. The man who had preyed on my daughter's vulnerability when she felt most invisible no longer had power over her. As for Sophia and me, our relationship transformed in ways I could never have predicted on that rainy afternoon when the voice message first shattered my world. One crisp evening in late October, months after the confrontation, Sophia came to my house instead of me going to hers. She looked different, thinner, but clearer-eyed, with her hair loose around her shoulders the way she used to wear it in college. She carried a notebook under her arm, the kind with thick, unlined pages she once filled with stories.
"Mom," she said finally, turning to me with eyes that held both pain and quiet strength. "Thank you for not turning away when you heard that message. I was so lost. I thought keeping secrets would protect everyone. Ryan, you, even myself. but all it did was trap me in a life that wasn't real. I almost disappeared completely. I reached over and took her hand, squeezing it gently. I was angry at first, hurt, scared for you. But you're my daughter, Sophia. No mistake, no matter how big, could make me stop loving you. I just wish I had seen how much you were struggling sooner. I was grieving your father, living in my quiet routines, and I stopped looking closely enough at your life. She smiled faintly, the first real, unguarded smile I had seen in months. I'm starting therapy twice a week now. Real therapy, not the surface stuff. And I'm writing again, not the polished freelance pieces for tech companies, but the raw, honest stories I used to love. Dark ones, messy ones, the kind that don't have neat endings. Maybe one day I'll turn all of this into a novel, a story about a woman who loses herself in someone else's expectations and has to claw her way back. I think you should, I said softly, tears gathering in my eyes. Because even in the darkest moments, there's always a hidden truth waiting to be discovered. Sometimes that truth breaks us, but sometimes it sets us free.
Sophia leaned her head on my shoulder, just like she did when she was a little girl, watching sunsets from this same porch. Our relationship isn't the same anymore, is it? No, I admitted. It's not. It's deeper now. Raw, more honest. We both know the worst parts of each other, and we're still here. That's stronger than any perfect Instagram version of family could ever be. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sound in hues of orange and pink, I realized how profoundly the voice message had changed us both. What I once saw as a devastating betrayal had become the catalyst for something real. Sophia was no longer performing the role of the perfect wife or the successful freelance writer. She was rediscovering the creative, sensitive girl I had raised, the one who dreamed big and felt everything deeply. And I was no longer just the supportive mother in the background. I had become her anchor, her confidant, and in many ways, her partner in healing. The divorce was finalized quietly in a downtown Seattle courtroom on a gray November morning. Sophia didn't cry when the judge signed the papers. She simply looked at me across the room and gave a small nod, the kind that said, "I'm going to be okay."
In the months that followed, she sold the big house in Bellevue and moved into a smaller, cozier cottage closer to me, with a writing desk overlooking a quiet garden. She started volunteering at a local literacy program, teaching young women to find their voices through stories. Slowly, the light returned to her eyes, not the polished, curated glow of before, but something warmer, more authentic. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, exactly 1 year after that fateful voice message first played in my kitchen, I found Sophia at my kitchen island, typing furiously on her laptop. She looked up when I walked in, a small, hopeful smile on her face. "I finished the first draft, Mom. It's called The Wrong Message. It's about a mother who accidentally hears her daughter's secret and how that mistake saved them both." I laughed softly, pulling her into a hug. I can't wait to read it. As we stood there in the warm light of my kitchen, the same place where everything had begun, I understood something profound. The voice message that had left me shaken, confused, and questioning everything I thought I knew about my daughter hadn't broken our family. It had remade it. Stronger, truer, more resilient. Because sometimes the most dangerous secrets, the ones hidden in plain sight, are exactly what we need to finally see each other clearly. And in seeing clearly, we find the courage to begin again.